Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Johnny Mark Elizalde. Elizalde was shot and killed on Saturday, June 11, 2016, in the 400 block of Shipman Avenue in the South San Jose Hills community near La Puente, according to LA County coroner records. Juan Quinares and Jose Lomeli were subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. On the evening of June 10, 2016, AML and the victim went to a small house party to celebrate the birthday of their friend AL. The party was mostly attended by family members, including AL's parents and his brother GL. Sometime after midnight, in the early morning hours of June 11, AML and the victim decided to head home. They walked across the street to where the victim's car was parked and got in. Before they could pull away from the curb, an SUV pulled up alongside them and stopped. Three people, two wearing hoodies and one wearing a hat, got out of the SUV and asked AML and the victim where they were from. AML understood the question as asking whether they belonged to a gang. AML said they were from nowhere. The victim got out of the car and exchanged words with the individuals, and very quickly, a physical altercation erupted between the victim and one of the individuals from the SUV. The victim looked like he needed help, so AML got out of the car. Almost immediately after confronting one of the individuals, shots rang out. AML was hit multiple times and fell to the ground, as did the victim. GL saw someone fighting with the victim and another person fighting with AML right before the shooting started. GL started to run in the direction of his friends, but the shooter then turned towards him. Both he and his brother saw muzzle flashes, so they turned and ran in the opposite direction to take cover. After the SUV fled, AL and GL ran back to where the victim and AML lay in the street. The victim appeared dead. AML looked bad and was gasping for air. GL jumped into the victim's car and drove off, hoping to find the SUV. He was unable to find the SUV but caught the attention of a patrol car and drove back to the crime scene. The victim died from the gunshot wounds he received. AML received multiple non-fatal gunshot wounds, including to his right arm and shoulder, his left hip, the left side of his head, and his chin. An autopsy revealed the victim suffered multiple gunshot wounds, including a fatal shot to his head. He also had a laceration on his scalp consistent with blunt force trauma. In June 2016, Ms. Anselde was dating defendant Lomeli. At the time, defendant Lomeli was the leader of the Townsmen criminal street gang with the nickname Villain. She knew defendant Quinares by his gang moniker, Loco. Defendant Lomeli was known for always carrying a loaded 9mm handgun. Ms. Anselde saw defendant Lomeli habitually carry it openly in front of defendant Quinares. On the night of June 10, 2016, Ms. Anselde was with defendant Lomeli, defendant Quinares, and two other Townsmen gang members, Jesse Nunez, known as Crooks, and the other known as Dreamer. They were at Dreamer's house drinking, doing drugs, and hanging out. At some point, defendant Lomeli said that the younger gang members needed some schooling and needed to be shown what old school gangbanging was about. He was holding his handgun at the time. Sometime after midnight, Ms. Anselde, defendant Lomeli, defendant Quinares, and Nunez left Dreamer's house in a white SUV driven by Ms. Anselde. Defendant Lomeli was in the front passenger seat, and Nunez and defendant Quinares were seated behind him. Ms. Anselde heard either defendant Quinares or Nunez say that someone was hitting up a wall, meaning someone was writing graffiti. They were in Townsmen territory. Defendant Lomeli told Ms. Anselde to make a U-turn, turn off her headlights, and go back. She complied. Ms. Anselde saw two males whom she did not recognize jogging across the street toward the parked car. She stopped the SUV next to the car but kept the engine running. Defendant Lomeli, defendant Quinares, and Nunez got out. Defendant Lomeli asked the two men where they were from. One of them replied they were from nowhere. Defendant Lomeli then said Townsmen, and the man standing next to the driver's side of the car replied, "Fuck Townsmen." A fistfight erupted. At some point, defendant Lomeli hit the victim in the head with the butt of the handgun and he fell down. The other man then started to wrestle with defendant Lomeli in an apparent attempt to wrest the gun from him. Defendant Lomeli shot AML and then shot the victim as he started to get up from the ground. Lomeli fired multiple shots, possibly around 10. Neither defendant Quinares nor Nunez returned to the SUV. They ran down the street in the direction of Quinares' house. Ms. Anselde and defendant Lomeli later learned that defendant Quinares had been shot in the shoulder during the fight and went to a hospital in West Covina for treatment. Defendant Lomeli got back into the SUV. His hands and clothes had blood on them. He told Miss Ancela to drive and then immediately told her to stop. He said he had forgot his hat and jumped out to look for it. Defendant Lomeli had been wearing a hat with the letter T on it, signifying the Townsmen gang. Miss Ancela heard a few more gunshots, and then Lomeli returned to the SUV with a hat in his hands. He told her to drive to his grandmother's house, but then realized he had the wrong hat and told Miss Ancela to turn around and go back to the crime scene. She refused because she was too scared and kept driving to Defendant Lomeli's grandmother's house. The hat was later found at the crime scene. The next day, Miss Ancela and Defendant Lomeli cleaned the blood spatter from the exterior and interior of the SUV, borrowed some money from a friend, and fled to Arizona. Before they left, Defendant Lomeli reloaded his handgun. They stayed with one of Lomeli's friends in Arizona for a few weeks, and while they were there, he sold the handgun. Defendant Lomeli and Miss Ancela drove back to California a short time later, returning to the home of Lomeli's grandmother. Miss Ancela said that after they returned to California, Defendant Lomeli took the SUV one day, evaded police, and eventually abandoned it on the road. Shortly thereafter, with Miss Ancela in tow, Defendant Lomeli stole a Jeep in Claremont and led police on a high-speed chase. Eventually, he crashed the Jeep and fled. Miss Ancela was taken into custody. She spoke with police and told them about the shooting incident in June and that Defendant Lomeli and Quinares were involved. Numerous 9mm shell casings were found at the scene. Testing revealed that samples taken from the hat with the T logo found at the crime scene were consistent with Defendant Lomeli's DNA profile. Detective Armando Orellana testified as the prosecution's gang expert. He stated his opinion that defendants Lomeli and Quinares were members of the Townsmen gang, as was Jesse Nunez. He described the gang signs and the use of the Texas Rangers T logo and said the shooting occurred in territory claimed by the Townsmen gang. Miss Ancela was originally charged as a co-defendant. She subsequently agreed to plead guilty and testify against defendants Lomeli and Quinares pursuant to a leniency agreement. According to the terms of her agreement, if she testified truthfully against her co-defendants, she would receive a sentence of 7 years. Following the trial, the jury found defendants Lomeli and Quinares guilty of murder and attempted murder and found true the gun and gang allegations. The jury also found defendant Lomeli guilty of numerous additional felonies arising from his efforts to evade arrest. The court sentenced Lomeli to 4 consecutive life terms with a minimum sentence of 160 years, plus an aggregate term of 23 years and 8 months. The court sentenced Quinares to 4 consecutive life terms with a minimum sentence of 82 years. Johnny Mark Elizalde was 27 years old at the time of death.